Okay. All right, so let's get started. So this is lecture 26, and we'll be looking at the delta sigma modulators. So this year, what I planned is that I'll spend some time on dealing with delta sigma modulators as compared to the previous couple of years that I have taught this course in IIST. And what I will do is probably I'll reduce the time that we will spend on high-speed I/O devices and maybe spend a little more time on delta sigma modulators. Okay. All right. So we'll kind of redo what we started in last class. We were looking at how we can put, how we can use feedback around a comparator. Okay. And what we were doing is we said that, we have a comparator which is modeled as an additive quantization error. And note that this additive quantization error is definitely not um, linear in the sense that it is not a constant error. It is going to be an input dependent error, right? Which is what makes the quantization process quite non-linear, right? And here what we are doing is we are going to say that the quantizer is put inside a loop, right? And well, let me say that, this is the op amp. You have the quantizer, and let's say this is your input voltage, and let's say you're trying to compare it with this one. Okay, so it need not be a comparator, it can be a quantizer. Obviously, I hope you can see some problem with this particular circuit or system that I have drawn. The problem being that you cannot, what you have here is a digital signal, or rather a quantized digital signal, and I'm comparing a digital signal with an analog signal. So obviously what is supposed to be included here is basically a small D2A. Okay. Now for the purpose of analysis, of course, we can basically say that what we are having is we will have an additive error, right? And we are going to have one clock cycle delay, right? And let's say this is your input and this is your output. So this is the mathematical model to see if something like this can actually work. Okay. So can this work? So what we are trying to do is to say that, okay, my quantizer is going to give some quantization error, but then by using feedback, I'm kind of trying to, correct the error. That's what that's what we are planning to do. All right. So if you were to write it in the n domain, the discrete domain, what you would write is basically that V out of n can be written as, let's say, A times A being the open loop gain of the op amp, right? V in of n plus there is a Z inverse, so it becomes V out of n minus 1, right? Plus E of n. Okay, yesterday I got this equation wrong, so please change it, right? So what we are saying is that the output at any nth sample, right, is nothing but A times V in of n plus, or rather, sorry, this is minus, right? Minus V out of n minus 1, the previous sample, the delayed sample, right? Plus E of n. Okay. Now, obviously, it also this whole thing works only when you do an oversampled system, because otherwise, if you start comparing with previous samples, you might get a large error. Okay. All right. So let's write it in the Z domain. What is it in the Z domain? V out of Z can be written as A times V in of Z minus Z inverse times V out of Z plus E of Z, right? You can kind of brush up your signals and systems basics, right? Okay. So rearranging this, what will you get? V out of Z into 1 plus A is equal to V in of Z into what? A plus E of Z. Correct? Now V out of Z can be written as A divided by 1 plus Z in, okay, where did I forget the Z? It is Z inverse into A, correct? You have Z inverse into A. So you have Z inverse into A into Vn of Z plus 1 by 1 plus Z inverse into A times E of Z. Okay. Now, if you look at this particular system, okay, what we are saying is that the signal has a certain transfer function, which we will later define as what is called a signal transfer function, and the noise has a certain transfer function. Here, please do understand, we are not talking about thermal noise, device noise, we are talking about quantization noise, right? So the quantization noise undergoes a certain other transfer function, okay? Now, even before we look at that, let's look at this particular transfer function. So where is the pole of the transfer function? You said 1 plus Z inverse A equal to 0, right? So where is your pole located? It is located at Z equal to A, correct? So in the Z domain, right, you have your unit circle, right? So anybody remember what is the condition for stability?
Inside the
Correct,
circle.
right? So for a stable system, all the poles should lie inside the unit circle. Correct. But where is this pole located? Let's say the gain of your op amp is 1000, right? So, sorry, Z is minus A. So your pole is actually at some minus 1000, for example, okay, or rather it is at minus A, right? So it basically means that this system is unstable, okay. So now you will be like, what are we doing here, right? We thought this is a nice system. You put a feedback loop. We know that a negative feedback loop solves a lot of problems, right? We thought we can do something to the quantization error by putting a feedback loop around it, and we end up with a system which is horribly unstable. Okay, so let us try to do something which will help us make the system stable. So what we are going to do is, instead of putting a normal op amp here, we are going to put an integrator. Okay, so what is an integrator? Discrete time integrator. So before that, integrator in time domain is, what is the response in the frequency domain? What type of a filter will it be? In the time domain, if you have, forget about discrete, I mean, it's true for both discrete time systems as well as continuous time systems, right? So if you have a continuous time integrator or a discrete time integrator, what would its frequency domain response be? Will it be a low pass filter, high pass filter, all pass filter? Be a low pass filter, right? So in the S domain, for a continuous time system, you have 1 over S, right, as an integrator, right? So it will basically, if you look at it, it's basically h of j omega is 1 by j omega. So modulus of h of j omega is what? 1 by omega, right? So it is a low pass filter, an ideal integrator. A real integrator will have 1 plus s by a, right? So which is what we saw in any of all these op amps. So it will have a something like this. The word plot will be like this. We had a real integrator, I mean ideal integrator, it will be like this, right? So this is the difference between, in the continuous domain time domain, this is how your integrator will look like, okay. It is also easy for us to, I mean, it is also useful for us to understand this in a more intuitive way. So if something is integrating, right, it's kind of averaging, right? So that's the job of a low pass filter, right? When you feed something through a low pass filter, it will remove all the high frequency components and will give you a kind of a low frequency average, right? So, which is why an integrator is a low pass filter, and a differentiator turns out to be obviously a high pass filter. Okay. So, how do you write a discrete time integrator? So, you will say V out of n can be written as V in of n plus V out of n minus 1, right? So, basically what is an integrator? So, you have a summation, you take a delay, you add, right? This is a accumulator or an integrator. So, you already have, it's, I mean, an easier way to understand is an accumulator. In the digital world, you have, looked at accumulator registers in microcontrollers and all that, right? Like you keep accumulating, you keep adding to the existing sum. That is what we are doing here. V out of n is nothing but the current input plus the previous output. So, this is an accumulator or an integrator. So, if you write this in the z domain, what will you get? V out of z is equal to V in of z plus z inverse times V out of z. Right? So, it's always good for us to have a good picture in mind. More than mathematics, as engineers, especially circuit engineers, you should have a very good intuitive understanding of all these different concepts, which is very important for your career, for your projects, and also for your interviews. Right? And also, when you talk about all these things, you should be able to quickly move between time domain and frequency domain responses, which is what many analog interviews will kind of look for, right? Whether you are able to understand things in both domains, or S domain or Z domain. How is it in the frequency? I mean, how is its frequency response? How is its time domain response? Okay, these are the things that are very crucial for an analog engineer. Okay, anyway, so this is what we get. So what is the transfer function? V out of Z divided by V in of Z. How can we write? So you'll have 1 divided by 1 plus, sorry, 1 minus Z inverse, right? Because this goes here, it becomes 1 minus Z inverse. So V out by V out of Z by V out by V in of Z is nothing but 1 by 1 minus Z inverse. So this is the transfer function for a discrete time integrator. Agreed? Right? So let us redo this loop and see what is happening if we have a Vn of Z, and instead of just a gain element, we are going to have 1 by 1 minus Z inverse, which is the integrator, summation E of Z, right? And of course, you have your delay. All right. So, of course, this is plus and this is minus. Okay. So, let us write the transfer function here. Okay. What is V out of Z? V out of Z is nothing but V in of Z minus Z inverse times V out of Z. This whole thing is multiplied by this transfer function 1 by 1 minus Z inverse plus E of Z. Correct? So let us move some terms around and let's see what is V out of Z. V out of Z will be multiplied by 1 plus Z inverse divided by 1 minus Z inverse. Correct? Is equal to Vn of Z divided by 1 minus Z inverse plus E of Z. Correct? Now this left hand side term 1 plus Z inverse, 1 plus Z inverse by 1 minus Z inverse, what will you get? Z inverse will cancel out in the numerator, 1 by 1 minus Z inverse, right? So V out of Z can be written as V in of Z, right? 1 by 1 minus Z inverse goes the other side, it is in the numerator. The numerator and the denominator cancel out for V in. And for E of Z, what do you get? This multiplied by 1 minus Z inverse. Okay. Now, if you look at this form, let me just rewrite it here in the next slide. V out of Z is equal to V in of Z plus E of Z multiplied by 1 minus Z inverse. Okay. Now, if you see, the output has two terms. one to do with the input and one to do with the quantization error, right? Now, the coefficient of V in of Z is 1, okay? So, the coefficient here is what is called as the signal transfer function, all right? That is, how does the signal from the input, what is the transfer function of the signal from the input to the output? So, the signal transfer function short form is STF is given as 1, right? Whereas what is the noise transfer function? NTF, what is that NTF here? 1 minus Z inverse.
1
Okay.
minus Z inverse.
So you can see that the quantization noise or the quantization noise power error is having a certain transfer function from the error to the output. Okay, so I'll just pause here so that you kind of understand or grasp what is happening here. Okay. The input is directly appearing at the output. Okay, the transfer function is 1. Whereas the quantization noise error that is being added, right, it is having a certain transfer function between where? To the point that it is added to the output. Okay. Why is it having? Because of the loop that we have put around it. Right. We have an integrator and we have a kind of a negative feedback loop which is around it. And because of this loop, the quantization noise that is added is having some kind of a transfer function. Okay. Now, what is this transfer function? Now, even without going through a lot of mathematics, can you look at this form and tell me, will it be a low pass transfer function or a high pass transfer function? Okay, very simply, for an integrator, we said it was a low pass transfer function, right? And its transfer function was 1 by 1 minus Z inverse. Okay. Here, what are you having? It is 1 minus Z inverse. What do you expect it to be? Correct. Your guess is right. It will be a high pass transfer function. Okay. So if you go back to your signals and systems or your DSP, you will see that, if you have basically, if you look at this does not have poles. This has 0. This has a 0. Okay. Where is the 0 of the transfer function? It's Z equal to 1. Right.
1.
So it has only a 0 and no poles. Obviously, it will be a high pass transfer function. Okay. Now let us also look at it. So the NTF is 1 minus Z inverse, which can be written as 1 minus e power minus j omega. Right. Just brush up your, if you just recollect your signals and systems thing. So we know that, in continuous domain, we say continuous time domain, we say SS, of course, in the Laplace domain, we say sigma plus j omega. But if you kind of want to evaluate along the j omega axis, you will say that, put SS j omega, right? So here again, what do you do? For Z, you put it as e power j omega, where omega is your discrete time frequency, right? It is given by 2 pi of f divided by your sampling frequency fs, right? So this is how small omega is defined, okay? Right. Now this is our transfer function. So let us try to see what happens to the magnitude of NTF. So how can you write the magnitude of NTF? So we can basically say, so this e power 1 minus e power j minus j omega, it can be done in different ways. One simple way that you would have seen even in DSP textbooks is to say, we'll take the half angle, e power j omega 2 by 2, and you'll say this is e power j plus omega by 2 minus e power minus j omega by 2. Correct? Both these forms are equivalent. If you take this e power minus j omega by 2 inside this brackets, you get the same transfer function. Now, looking at what you have inside the brackets, what can you write it as?
Sine 2j sine omega by
Correct.
2. Sine term.
You can write it as
2j.
2j e power minus j omega by 2 into sine omega by 2, right? Good. Now, let's say we want to calculate what is the modulus or the magnitude of the transfer function. What will you get? You'll have 2 into e power j omega by 2 now will basically be what? I mean, it's just a yeah.
1.
You will basically, yeah, it will become 1, and therefore you
2 sine
you
omega
have
by
only
2.
sine omega by 2. And for small omega, yeah,
So 2
this will
times
be
sine.
approximately, yeah, you'll have 2 times sine omega by 2, so it will be approximately omega. And why will omega be small? Because you are rationalized it with the sampling frequency, and we have already assumed that we are oversampling the whole thing, and therefore this small omega is going to be, I mean, quite small, right? And therefore you can approximate it to be omega, okay? And therefore, if you want to find out what is the total integrated noise, in-band noise, okay? So you remember I showed in last class that this whole deal with the delta sigma modulators is that you oversample it, you put some feedback loop to shape the noise, right? And then what you will do is basically you will take only what you want, okay? So if you look at this transfer function, okay, this is what is called as a first order delta sigma modulator. All right. So if you want to plot the transfer function NTF mod NTF, right? So if this is your frequency axis, let's say this is your 20 log of, you know, mod frequency. So this will basically be something like this. Okay. So this is how your noise transfer function will basically look like. And what are we going to do? We are going to put a low pass filter here. Okay. So now what is happening here? Let me kind of, you know, draw it a little more clearly so that we can appreciate. Something like this. Let's say this is the 20 log of NTF, and what we are doing is we are going to put a low pass filter like this. Now obviously this low pass filter is going to be there, it's going to be in the digital domain, right? It might be an FIR or something like that, right? Now what have we done? Before your let me use this color, okay. Before you did noise shaping, okay, if you take the, let's say, the single sided spectrum, your quantization noise was something like this, right? Let me say this is my OSR times Fs, or rather let me say F Nyquist, all right, by 2. Okay. So this is how my quantization noise was. And what was the SNR here? You basically had, I mean, this is the noise power that you would have had inside the band. The in-band noise power, if you didn't do any noise shaping or any feedback loop, if you just did an oversampling and if you put a filter, that shaded portion is going to be the noise power, right? The area there. But now what did we do? Because of this loop that we designed, right? What is happening? Now the shaded portion is only this much. Now you can see how much of noise it has attenuated. Okay. Now we must understand that the overall noise is going to be the same. The total integrated noise power from let's say 0 to minus OSR times F Nyquist by 2 to plus OSR times F Nyquist by 2, or rather the total integrated noise power remains the same. So that is very important for us to understand. Okay. the total integrated noise power is the same. All right. But what is happening is the in-band noise power is reduced, or rather I should say that this is shaped. Okay. In other words, what are we doing? We are kind of taking the noise which is there at the lower frequencies, kind of taking it out and dumping it in the higher frequencies. All right. It is like sometimes you see people who clean their houses, take all the garbage and dump it in the next compound. Okay, so that's kind of what is happening here. All right, you take all the quantization noise in the low frequency band and take it and throw it in your in the high frequency band. All right, so this is basically your noise transfer function. Okay, so let us look at what is the integrated in-band noise power. So for that, what will we do? We'll say 12 del squared by 12 times pi. The reason I'm writing pi is like in yesterday's class I wrote in terms of fs, right? So fs by 2 will be pi, right? Fs by 2 corresponds to an angular frequency of pi, right? Discrete time frequency of pi. So this is integrated from 0 to pi by OSR. Okay. So in other words, what are we saying? This particular thing, this is pi and this is pi by OSR. Correct? Just keep Fs by 2 as pi. Okay, that is obvious. I hope all of you are familiar with this. Or in other words, you can go and use this formula. Okay. So this is 12 del squared by 12 pi. So let's say this is the total integrated noise. It's del squared by 12 pi integrated from 0 to pi by OSR. What will you have? NTF squared into d omega. Right? So what will this be? Del squared by 12 pi, 0 to pi by OSR, and this is omega squared d omega. So what is the integration? It will become del squared by 12 pi omega cube by 3 going from 0 to pi by OSR. So if you expand it, what will you get? Del squared by 12 pi into 3, you will have omega cube, right? So it will become pi cube divided by OSR cube, right? So what will you get here? You will have del squared by 36 pi squared by OSR cube. Okay. So in other words, what we are saying here is that because of the shaping, okay, because of the shaping that you are having, right, you are having the total integrated noise power reduced from del squared by 12 to del squared pi squared by 36 times OSR cube. Okay. Now, if you scale, what do we see here? By scaling OSR and having a first order delta sigma, you are going to get what is the advantage going to be? Okay, so let us look at that. So roughly it turns out to be that you will have 6 dB per octave of scaling OSR. What is scaling of OSR? Okay, let's say if you double the OSR, right, the improvement in S noise for doubling OSR will be how much? The noise will go down by a factor of 2 to the power of 3, which is 8. Right? What I am doing is, if I double the OSR, right, how much will I get? So I have 2 times OSR. So I will reduce the quantization noise power, in-band quantization noise power by a factor of 8. Right? Because it becomes 2 to the power of 3. Okay. In other words, my SNR is going to increase by a factor of 8. Correct. Now, so if you,
So the pi square term
yeah,
is
I'm
also
just
there.
saying that if you, let's say you take an OSR of 32 and then you shift it to an OSR of 64. All right, I'm changing only the OSR rate.
Okay.
So by changing that, you'll have an increase in SNR of about 8, right? So if you, what is the logarithmic value? If it's multiplied by a factor of 8, let's say 10 log of 8, so it's around 9 dB. Right? This is around 9 dB improvement. Okay. So there is a 9 dB improvement. So I will write it as 9 dB per octave improvement. Okay. And this corresponds to how much? So SNR is given by in SNR, right? So this SNR corresponds to 6.0 to n plus 1.76, right? So if you have 9 dB improvement, what does it mean? That is like saying 1.5 bits improvement in resolution. So what I'm saying is, let's say you have OSR 1 and OSR 2. Let's say OSR is 16 in one case, the other case it is 32. So for every doubling of the OSR, you are going to have an SNR improvement of a factor of 8, which in terms of decibels turns out to be 9 dB, right? So if you have a 9 dB improvement in SNR or SQNR, equivalently it is like saying I'm going to have an improvement of 1.5 bits in resolution. So for every doubling of your OSR, you will have a 1.5 bits improvement, okay, in resolution. So what can we say with this? What can you conclude here? The conclusion is you can take a crappy ADC, all right, and of course put a crappy, I mean you should have a good DAC, but then let's say you have a low resolution ADC, okay, let me rephrase it as low resolution ADC, and you take that ADC, put it in this feedback loop. Of course, you also need the same resolution D to A converter, right? But if you put it in this feedback loop and if you do this oversampling and of course this filtering and decimation, what you are saying is you can take a low resolution ADC and form a high resolution ADC out of it, correct? Right? If I do an oversampling factor of 2, if I start oversampling, instead of a factor of 2, if I'm doing, let's say, 128 oversampling or 256 oversampling ratio, right? I'm going to keep increasing my resolution. Okay, so I can take an 8-bit ADC and easily construct a 16-bit ADC or a 20-bit ADC or so on. All right. So what people have even come up with is that they have said, like, why to even look at a 8-bit or a 6-bit ADC? I will do it with a 1-bit ADC. Okay. So let me summarize and say that a low resolution ADC can be enhanced using delta sigma modulation to provide high resolution. Okay. And an extreme case is to use a 1-bit ADC. What is a 1-bit ADC? Come on, guys. What is a 1-bit ADC?
Inverter.
Comparator, right? You take a comparator. Yeah.
Okay.
A 1-bit ADC is a single comparator, right? So you can use even a single comparator, a 1-bit ADC, and achieve a multi-bit resolution, which is what people have done. And in fact, this is so popular that if you want something like, greater than 16, 18 dB, 16 bits resolution and so on, most likely you will see that delta sigma modulators are used. In fact, if you look at your audio, any audio interfaces, let's say in your laptop or in your mobile phone, right, you will basically see delta sigma modulators for audio. You will have 24-bit audio, digital audio converters, right, or 16-bit, 24-bit. So all these are typically delta sigma modulator converters. Okay, and of course each implementation can be different, and you can even have a multi-bit ADC, but a lot of delta sigma modulators operate with only one comparator. Okay, so it means that you have a very simple proper 1-bit comparator, and then you use it and you make a 16-bit, 12-bit, 16-bit, 18-bit, 20-bit, 24-bit ADCs. Okay, purely because that you can oversample it and do these things. Now, please recall that all this analysis is done using a first order delta sigma modulator. Okay. Now, let me give you one more piece of information. People typically do not use a single first order delta sigma modulator. Okay, because they have found out that other higher order delta sigma modulators give you even better performance. Okay, so what is a higher order delta sigma modulator? Okay, so this kind of operates on the the kind of a the greed in man, right? Of course, greed for these things is not wrong, right? But in the sense that, like, can I extract something even more? Can I do even better, right? So what they say is, what people have come up with is, if you look at a simple this single first order delta sigma modulator, what do you have? You have a integrator, right? And you have this quantization noise, right? And you have, this is your first order delta sigma modulator, correct, which we saw right now. Now what we are saying is, I want to get even more noise shaping. Okay, uh, can I put this noise, okay, or rather let me kind of explain like this. Can I put this delta sigma modulator itself inside one more delta sigma modulator? That is to say, okay, I am not happy with the noise performance that I'm getting. I want to get even more. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, I'm going to construct one more delta sigma modulator, a first order type delta sigma modulator. So what do you have? You have the summation thing. This is your V in, right? And this is where your quantizer is placed, right? Now instead of the quantizer, I'm going to put a first order DSM, okay, and take this and put it. So instead of the quantizer alone being in the loop, I am going to put the first order delta sigma modulator itself into another delta sigma modulator loop. So this is what is called as a second order delta sigma modulator. Okay, so let us expand this, right? This is our first summation V in plus minus our first integrator 1 by 1 minus z inverse. Okay, now here it goes to the next delta sigma modulator, which is basically like this, right? 1 by 1 minus z inverse. You have the quantization error being added, which is basically your quantizer. It can be a 1-bit quantizer, or it can also be a multi-bit quantizer, right? Of course, we know that there is a DAC also, but for mathematical purposes, we just understand the same value is reproduced here. Okay, so this is your first order delta sigma modulator, correct? All right. Now this is put inside this loop. All right. So you can see that this is your implementation. Now you can see that there are two Z inverses in parallel. So why have two delay elements? Let's just kind of make it into one delay element. Okay. So this is basically your second order delta sigma modulator. Okay. So let's say if this is V in, let's call this as maybe uh, X, Vx, right? Okay, sorry. Yeah, just here. Okay. Now how can we write the expression for this? So we'll try to write V out is equal to, so how will you write the expression? Right? V out can be written as V in minus V in of Z minus Z inverse into V out of Z, right? This is multiplied by 1 minus 1 by 1 minus Z inverse, right? So this is what you are having at this particular point, okay? So that is subtracted again from what? Minus Z inverse into V out of Z, correct? And this whole thing is again multiplied by 1 by 1 minus Z inverse, correct? Plus E of Z, all right? So let us try to, write this expression 1 by 1 minus Z inverse becomes the common denominator, plus of course we'll leave E of Z separately, right? So what do you have? V in of Z minus Z inverse into V out of Z minus 1 minus Z inverse into Z inverse into V out of Z. Right? So what do you get here? So you basically you'll have V in of Z minus Z inverse of V out of Z. So rather let's take V out of Z into, you have Z inverse, so minus one more Z inverse, so you have 2 Z inverse, right? And because the minus sign has been taken out, and you have plus Z to the power of minus 2, okay, divided by 1 minus Z inverse plus E of Z, okay.
Sir, in denominator, it's 1 minus Z inverse
Oh
squared.
yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, sorry, this is fine, this is correct, yes.
No, not there, sir.
Yeah, because it's multiplying inside, right? Yes, correct. Okay, thanks for pointing out. Okay, so now what happens is basically you have V out is equal to V out into 1 plus, what do you get? 2 times Z inverse plus Z to the power of minus 2 divided by 1 minus Z inverse the whole squared, right, is equal to V in times V in of Z divided by 1 by 1 minus Z inverse the whole square plus E of Z into plus E of Z. This is what you get. Okay. So what we will do is if you kind of solve this, what will you get? This is 1 minus Z inverse the whole power 2. So you'll have 1 plus Z power minus 2, right? Minus 2 Z inverse. Okay. I think this is this is minus, right? Because we have taken the minus sign inside. So this will be minus, right? So this plus 2 times Z minus Z minus 2. So all the Z terms are going to get cancelled out in the numerator, right? This is V out of Z into this whole thing equal to V in of Z divided by 1 minus Z inverse the whole square plus E of Z. So basically this will get cancelled out. So you will end up with what? V out of Z is equal to V in of Z, because these two terms will cancel out, plus E of Z into 1 minus Z inverse the whole power 2. Correct? Okay, now what is the STF? Signal transfer function is 1. Yeah.
Squared of
What
the
is the
earlier.
noise transfer function? NTF?
Oh, 1 minus
1
Z
minus
inverse.
Z inverse the whole square. Okay. So what is the difference between this noise transfer function and the second order noise transfer function? Now it is this the whole squared, right? So if you follow the same argument and you find out what is modulus of NTF, you will see that it will be omega squared, Correct. Now, if you plot this, okay, so this is actually quite important. Let me, okay, your, let's say this is your first order noise transfer function, okay, is going to be something like, okay, this is first order. Let me, all right. Now, how is omega squared going to look like? Going to be a, actually, sorry, I've been drawing some kind of curves. It's basically like, a straight line. It's if you take this, it's actually a straight line, right? You have kind of a, it's not this color, something like this. But of course, this is valid only at the low frequency. So here it will be straight, and then it will have some kind of a curve, right? That curve, because that NTF was valid only, that sine omega by 2 is equal to omega by 2 is valid only for lower frequencies, and it does not hold up for higher frequencies. So which is why you have that little curve happening, okay? But whereas if you look at the second order noise transfer function, how will it look like? It will have a quadratic behavior
Parabolic.
here, right? You will have a quadratic behavior, and then of course what will happen is it will kind of saturate like this here, okay? Because at higher frequencies that approximation doesn't work anymore, but it will be something like this, okay? So if you zoom into this, you have one which is linear and the other which is quadratic. Now you tell me which will have lesser noise.
At lower frequencies, quadratic one will have
Correct.
lesser
At
noise.
lower frequencies, because that is where we are interested in, because we are anyway going to put a low pass filter, right? So here you can see that one is linear and the other is quadratic. So the NTF of, I mean, the S noise of second order is going to be lesser than the integrated noise of the first order, okay? So in other words, if you kind of extrapolate it, you can say that the NTF can be written as 1 minus Z inverse to the power of L, where L is the order of the loop of the delta sigma modulator, okay? Where L is the order of the delta sigma modulator, okay? So with this, I think I'll conclude today's class, and we will analyze what is its noise performance and other things in from next class onwards, okay? Okay, any doubts, any questions? Okay, all right,
No, sir.
okay, thanks everyone, and please work on your assignment and submit it by 30th. RFIC assignment is due on 31st. I hope all of you are working on that as well. Any questions or doubts? Okay, all right, okay, thanks everyone, have a nice day.
Thank you, sir.